Hello card fighters, welcome to a new video of Vanguard Potential. This time, we will be talking about the Dark Horse armor hero, Spectral Duke Dragon. Who is that, you may ask? Let's delve into it a bit, shall we? The heaven-sent child of the Black Dragon, Vortimer, whose entire body transformed when he was recognized and accepted by the armor of the Black Horse. The armor, working in concert with the sleeping draconic nature deep inside him, he obtained the body of a man along with the powerful flesh of a dragon from memories so ancient that could never have been known. The power that the armor of the Black Horse carries is that of darkness. But darkness is itself not evil. He is able to decide how the power is unleashed by his own will and intention. There is a legend of a guardian dragon who fought wearing the armor of the Black Horse. This power, from the age of myths and legends, has now once again revived, transcending beyond time. From this piece of lore, we learn that Spectral Duke Dragon is actually identified as Vortimer, clad in the armor of the Black Horse which awakened his dark dragon powers. Despite adoring dark powers, he uses them for good. He shares a spot with Ezel as being an iconic Gold Paladin unit, and we've seen Ren Suzugamori wield his powers. Spectral Duke also connects Gold Paladin to Shadow Paladin, as the Golden Army was made by a group of Royal Paladin and Shadow Paladin units when the leaders of the former two factions were abducted by a great evil known as the Void. The Spectral deck has a lot going for it, including high pressure with its double critical on 2, or more, Vanguard attacks. Thanks to the relatively large power given to the Vanguard via skills, these attacks pose a significant threat to the opponent. It can also manage resources very well as it generates XL markers quickly, a precious trait for the Gold Paladins as they can swarm the field in the blink of an eye. Whether it's by the Vanguard or by numerous rearguards, opponents can expect assaults from all angles. That said, every strategy has its setbacks. The first being that this deck is quick to deck out if you aren't careful, and it can be quite piece-reliant at the beginning of a game to ride into the proper units. The power threshold of rearguard attacks can be pretty low compared to other swarm decks, as you rely more so on the Vanguard himself. Some opponents will exploit damage denial as a means to prevent your limit break and ultimate break combo, which when done successfully leads to 3 devastating Vanguard attacks. Luckily, strides cover this last weakness with plenty of options to choose from. Before we continue, here is a global view of the decklist skeleton, providing the necessary output as well as resources which we will explain about in this video. If you want to take your time with this, feel free to pause the video. Now then, let's take a closer look at the big boy of the deck. Spectral Duke Dragon's first effect is a very special one, allowing him to become a pseudo-Force Clan Vanguard. He gains a 13k power base during both players' turns if you have a Black Dragon Knight, Vortimer in your soul, and if your opponent is grade 3 or higher he also gains an extra critical. This immediately fixes one of the biggest issues XL clans have against Force decks, and should not be undervalued. Defensively, this helps you survive against other XL and protect decks, too. For his second effect, we get to the good part. Once per turn, at the end of the battle he attacked, you may pay 1 counterblast and retire 3 of your rearguards. If you do, stand this Vanguard and it loses 1 drive until the end of the turn. However, if your damage zone has 4 or more cards, your drive checks instead increase by 1, which effectively gives him a triple drive. For those of us who remember the Limit Break era, this is a dose of nostalgia. The simplicity of his skill design does not diminish the sheer value this combination of 2 effects provides. Even if your first 2 drive checks reveal nothing but duds, the innate double critical from the Vanguard is sure to punish any opponent sitting on their grade 3 cheeky enough to no-guard your attack. You either die a hero, or live long enough to become reversed. That's how the saying goes, right? Anyway, Spectral Duke Dragon is rocking a skill similar to his earlier V-Series counterpart where he gains extra power and a critical if the original Spectral Duke is in your soul. Don't fix what's not broken. As a trade-off for gaining 10k power compared to the modest 1k power from Spectral Duke, Spectral Dupe is not allowed to keep the defensive power during your opponent's turn. Falling in line with Spectral Duke's playstyle, His reverse counterpart can counterblast 1 and then lock 3 of your own rear guards to restand himself. Doing so reduces his drive checks by 1. This may seem like an odd downgrade or sidegrade to Spectral Duke, but stick with us. The third skill is where the fun begins. Dupe's third skill is an auto ability that activates from hand at the end of the battle that your vanguard attacked. If you have 5 or more damage, counterblast 2, lock 3 of your rear guards, and superior ride into this card. When you do this, Spectral Dupe loses all his auto abilities until end of turn, including his ability to restand. In an ideal scenario, you'll first hack and slash at your opponent with 2 Spectral Duke attacks, only to then finish off any survivors with Spectral Dupe bursting onto the scene with a deadly third vanguard attack. If the opponent is grade 3 or higher, each of these attacks has 2 criticals and between 13k to 29k power, unboosted and without trigger effects. One important detail to notice is that Dupe's second skill translates into an extra vanguard swing with only 1 drive, whereas his higher roll with the from-hand skill leads to an attack with 2 drive checks. Talk about explosive plays. But every legend must have an origin story, so let's take a look at the RIDELINE for this deck. Black Dragon Whelp Vortimer is a forerunner that lets you check the top 7 cards of your deck to search for your ideal grade 2 or grade 3 ride target if you ride into the grade 1 unit Scout of Darkness, Vortimer. Of the latter, we play the V-Series variant which has an identical search effect, as well as an effect on RC where it sends itself to Soul and gives your Vanguard 5k extra power if this unit was retired by your card ability. Providing both soul and power to a restanding Vanguard and a deck with ample ways to make use of Soul Blast costs is simply fantastic. Last but not least, we have the grade 2 of the hero's RIDELINE, Black Dragon Knight, Vortimer. If his grade 1 counterpart is in your Soul, Black Dragon Knight, Vortimer becomes a 10k unit on both VC and RC. In the same vein as his grade 1 form, he gives you resource gain if you retire him by your own card effects, namely Countercharge 1. When Spectral Duke Dragon rides on top of Black Dragon Knight, you may check the top 5 cards of your deck and call 2 units from among them to RC. Here we see a Gold Paladin deck do what it does best, utilize combos to call more soldiers to the field, regain resources, and occasionally draw in some fresh meat to satiate the bloodlust of their boss. I mean what? If you're familiar with Gold Paladins, then you probably know these 2 very well. Bluish Flame Liberator Percival has a Vanguard skill where all your units on XL circles benefit from an extra 5k power. You don't actively want to ride Percival, but this certainly helps mitigate bad scenarios where you didn't find Spectral Duke or Dupe. The true reason Percival has become such a highly coveted card in any Gold Paladin deck, though, is its second skill. When placed on VC or RC, as long as your Vanguard is grade 3 or great, you can counterblast 1 and discard a card from your hand to gain 1 XL gift. Then, search your deck or drop zone for up to 1 copy of Oath Liberator, Aglavale and call it to RC, then shuffle your deck. This ability can only be used by a unit with this name once per turn. There's no arguing about it, this is incredible value on many levels. An amazing card to call as rearguard. Speaking of great value, Aglavale has a terrific second skill and a rather good first one. When placed on VC, if you pay Counterblast 1 you can check the top 3 cards of your deck and call up to 2 RC, then the other cards go to the bottom of your deck. Good to get some early field presence, bodies to sack for your Vanguard later, perhaps proc some units on place skills, or just deck thin a tiny bit. When Aglavale attacks on RC, you can put 1 other rear guard to soul to have him gain 10k power, and at the end of the battle, you bounce him to hand. There is a lot to unpack here, such as a soul charge to pay costs with, getting a big beatstick, getting extra shield value to hand, giving control clans the middle finger, or making sure Spectral Duke and Dupe see the cards they want in soul. This iconic duo is simple, powerful, and very versatile. Gotta love it, folks. On the topic of iconic duos, we simply must mention the Black Chains duo. Advance of the Black Chains Gahideen has an on-play skill to counterblast 1 and discard a card, then check the top 3 cards of your deck and call a card from among them to RC. If you have his grade 1 buddy, Stronghold of the Black Chains, Hole on VC or RC, you get the added bonus of drawing a card. Stronghold of the Black Chains, Hole focuses on empowering the units you called by giving units called in the same column as Hole an extra 5k power. If you have RIDELINE on RC, the units that get strengthened this way gain 10k power instead of 5k. Good art, and great skills. These two are useful for some early rushing and still very dependable in the late game, provided you have some counterblast to spare. Fast Chase Liberator, Josephus provides you an extra RG when he is rode upon, and if he's placed on RC from the deck, you can Soul Blast 1 to countercharge 1. If you spend a second Soul Blast, you also draw 1. Listener of Truth, Dindrain works similar to Josephus' second skill, where she can pay Soul Blast 1 to either draw you a card or countercharge 1 and gain 3k power until the end of your turn. Remember that you need to choose one, as you can't activate both. These two provide you some very useful resources to keep up tempo, and will put any excess soul you have to good use. Thanks to the Black Chains duo and several of your stride options in this deck, you'll have several opportunities to fully utilize their skills and keep your momentum going strong. Before moving on to the G-Zone, we'll round up the main deck by discussing our trigger options. Gold Garnish is a reliable critical trigger that doubles down as a stride fodder. Although this deck runs 10 grade 3 units, they're still valuable combo pieces for your win condition. Therefore, having Gold Garnish Lion gives you some much appreciated alternative cost payers. A solid 4 of Hail of Shield Mark is your run-off-the-mill V-Series draw PG. Thanks to certain cards in the G-Zone, we can use him to defend us from enemy attacks even when he's in the main deck, but more on that later. Run him at 4 because it saves you deck slots, and this combo deck needs to draw its pieces to steamroll the opponent. Ketchbull Liberator is a stand trigger with a nifty ability. When he is called on to RC from your deck, you can send him back to the bottom of the deck and check 3 cards from the top of your deck. Pick one card from among them not named Ketchbull Liberator and call it to an open RC, then shuffle your deck. This effectively enables you to keep triggers in your deck, and gives you a second chance in calling out the allies you want by your side. For those of you new to the premium format, a stand trigger, when checked during a drive check, allows you to restand one of your rested RG. This allows for some extra attacks your opponent might not expect. Clarity Winged Dragon is a heal trigger as well as a heal guardian. That last part means it has 2 skills it can use as long as you didn't try it into any grade 3 or higher unit during this fight. When you use him to guard, he can provide your Vanguard an extra 10k power for the rest of the turn, or reduce the criticals of one opponent's unit by 2 until the end of turn. Both of these skills provide some defense against getting rushed right out of the gate, and can deter opponents from being overly aggressive as soon as possible. It has less shield value than the standard 20k shield heal triggers from V-Series, but this hardly matters as you will use these heal guardians often as fodder to pay for G-Guardians. More on this later. And last but certainly not least, we have one over trigger. Light Dragon Deity of Honors, a Martino when drive checked gives all of your attacking rear guards the ability to perform drive checks. For the full explanation and rules on over triggers, please consult the Vanguard wiki. The reason we picked a Martino over the Cray Elemental over trigger, is that this deck has 10 grade 3 units and creates huge boards, allowing many rearguards to exert extra pressure. A drawback to this is that the effect can accelerate deck out if your opponent somehow survives your attacks long enough for it to matter. But hey, if you weren't all about living fast and dangerously, you wouldn't be playing Gold Paladin, right? Now it's time to kick off the final part of our deck build, the G-Zone. First we'll start off with the G-Units. Brambant Dragon keeps it short and simple. When he attacks, you can put 2 rear guards on the bottom of your deck and flip a card in G-Zone face up. By doing so, you draw 2 cards, call up to 2 cards from your hand to RC, and if you called 2 cards, Brambant Dragon gains 1 extra critical. There are lots of small shenanigans you can do here. Creating extra attacks is one of them, but you can also send cards you want in deck back there, set up your G-Zone and accelerate the count of face-up cards, pressure the opponent with a double critical Vanguard, and activate skills of rear guards that go off when they're called by an effect. The fact that he has no generation break restrictions whatsoever sweetens the deal even further. Golden Knight of Prosperity. Idvarius is an aggressive stride that powers up all rear guards placed by a card ability this turn by 5k power. Her bread and butter skill is a once per turn auto ability that on attack lets her pay Counterblast 1 to put all of your rested RG on the bottom of your deck, choose up to 2 cards from hand, and call them to RC. If at least 4 cards were sent back to deck by this effect, Idvarius restands herself and loses 2 drive checks until the end of turn. Note that she still keeps 3 drive checks on the first attack, it's only the second attack that she loses her triple drive. Once again a stride unit that has lots of synergy with the deck. She fixes the issue this deck has of RG having somewhat low numbers. She gives you 2 Vanguard attacks, and her method of sending RG away means she's an excellent option against hard control matchups. She also helps you to recycle good call targets into the deck. Sometimes you'll either run out of resources or deny them by your opponent. In such scenarios, Glorious Reigning Dragon can be helpful. When it attacks, if you have called 2 RG during this turn, you can Counterblast 1 and flip a copy of himself face up and choose 2 of your RG and put them on the bottom of your deck. If you do, look at the top 7 cards from your deck, and call cards from among them up to the number of face-up cards in your G-zone to RC, then shuffle your deck. If you called 3 or more cards this way, Countercharge and Soul Charge 1. This can be a good way to refill your field without losing all too many resources, and due to its own cost you've already got 1 out of 3 cards needed face-up to fulfill the full skill. Call normal units from your deck this way and shuffle the deck because deck thinning is winning. Sometimes you'll either run out of resources or deny them by your opponent. In such scenarios, Glorious Reigning Dragon can be helpful. When it attacks, if you have called 2 RG during this turn, you can Counterblast 1 and flip a copy of himself face up and choose 2 of your RG and put them on the bottom of your deck. If you do, look at the top 7 cards from your deck, and call cards from among them up to the number of face-up cards in your G-zone to RC, then shuffle your deck. If you called 3 or more cards this way, Countercharge and Soul Charge 1. This can be a good way to refill your field without losing all too many resources, and due to its own cost you've already got 1 out of 3 cards needed face-up to fulfill the full skill. Call normal units from your deck this way and shuffle the deck because deck thinning is winning. Sometimes you'll either run out of resources or deny them by your opponent. In such scenarios, Glorious Reigning Dragon can be helpful. When it attacks, if you have called 2 RG during this turn, you can Counterblast 1 and flip a copy of himself face up and choose 2 of your RG and put them on the bottom of your deck. If you do, look at the top 7 cards from your deck, and call cards from among them up to the number of face-up cards in your G-zone to RC, then shuffle your deck. If you called 3 or more cards this way, Countercharge and Soul Charge 1. This can be a good way to refill your field without losing all too many resources, and due to its own cost you've already got 1 out of 3 cards needed face-up to fulfill the full skill. Call normal units from your deck this way and shuffle the deck because deck thinning is winning. If Robocats aren't your thing, how about Sanctified Dragon, a golden robot? Bull Dragon? Yeah, I got nothing here, Chief. When it's placed on Guardian Circle, you may pay 1 Soul Blast to look at 2 cards from the top of your deck and call up to 2 unit cards from among them to Guardian Circle. If you called 1 or more cards with grade 1 or greater, you get to draw 1 card. Can make all the difference in a pinch, and once again a way to high roll and get Hail a Shield, marked to do overtime. Unlike Real and Slimy Flare, control matchups cannot stop this G-Guard from going full throttle, making it very convenient to have. If Robocats aren't your thing, how about Sanctified Dragon, a golden robot? Bull Dragon? Yeah, I got nothing here, Chief. When it's placed on Guardian Circle, you may pay 1 Soul Blast to look at 2 cards from the top of your deck and call up to 2 unit cards from among them to Guardian Circle. If you called 1 or more cards with grade 1 or greater, you get to draw 1 card. Can make all the difference in a pinch, and once again a way to high roll and get Hail a Shield, marked to do overtime. Unlike Real and Slimy Flare, Control matchups cannot stop this G-guard from going full throttle, making it very convenient to have. As mentioned previously, decks that wipe your board can diminish the strength of your other G-guards. In such cases, Elise comes to the rescue. As part of her skill, if you counterblast one and turn another G-Guardian face up, Elise lets you check the top 2 cards from your deck and call one card to Guardian Circle. If the attack is successfully guarded, the unit called to Guardian Circle this way is moved to RC. The card you did not send to Guardian Circle goes to the bottom of your deck. This G-Guard has a lot to offer. If you need rearguards on board, I'm looking at you, G-Era Vanquisher, this card helps out a ton. If you want to call an extra interceptor, that works too. But she also accelerates the amount of face-up cards in G-Zone, gives you a big shield, and provides cards needed to further boost the power of your other G-Guards. Solid stuff. Also, insert mandatory comment on Hail a Shield, Mark. Working with this, and with all that out of the way, it's time to wrap up the video with some of our final thoughts on the deck. Spectral Duke has an aggressive playstyle that goes through the deck rapidly to find the pieces it needs. When being damage denied by opponents, you can rely on a plethora of strides to keep the momentum going, with some strides even slowing down the threat of deck out, albeit it by just a bit. In terms of offense, you're not left wanting with several options and different approaches based on the situations you're facing. Last but not least, thanks to cards like Percival etc., the deck generates additional XL gifts which tremendously benefit a deck such as this. That being said, deck out is an ever-present threat, especially if the opponent can survive your onslaught long enough. Your most dreaded matchups will be Mega Colony and Narukami, whom both have some very disruptive tactics for this playstyle's inner workings. It should also be noted that Spectral Dupe Dragon's self-locking mechanic can be punished by Link Joker opponents in different ways, so do keep that in mind. And that's it, folks. Thank you so much for watching the video. Be sure to like and subscribe, and let us know what other type of content you'd love to see in our future videos. With that said, we shall see you in the next Vanguard Potential.